Now, we have several guests here and returning members and all that. So, Norm, you said you had a guest.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce John Sharon. He's a volunteer conductor at Steamtown, and he's also a volunteer motorman at the Trolley Museum in Scranton.
Oh, nice.
Very good.
Great.
And we have another distinguished guest, well, you're a guest and Nick's a member. Nick Scally in the red sweater and his wife Barbara are here. And Barbara is the daughter of Thomas B. Gerard, the last general manager of the railroad. I knew that from before, but I found out tonight that she also worked for the O&W. 2 summers, she said?
Yes.
And during World War II?
World War II.
Yeah, so as a traffic clerk and all that? That's super duper. When we get to before they go to the order section, I'll ask you to just tell us some of your memories if you don't mind. So, okay, very good. Any other? Yeah. Any other returning members or guests or anything? All right. Okay, minutes of the February meeting. Uncle Ray.
Good evening. The meeting was called to order by President Otto at 7:38 with 66 people in attendance. The minutes of the last meeting were read and accepted. Treasurer's report by Joe Myers. Joe reports we have $45,225.04 in our checking account and $160,033.67 in our Merrill Lynch fund for a total of $205,258.71. Membership report by Ray Pingora. Ray reports we have 2 new members for a total of 560. 385 have renewed, which is a 69% rate. Archives report by Jeff Otto. Jeff reports the same as last month. Improvements have been made, but the place is still not perfect. New shelves are being installed. Publications report by Carl Olson. Carl reports that the new Observer is out and is well received. Work has begun on the 2017 calendar. The 2016 Observer will be on the Port Jervis, Monticello, and Kingston branch. The newsletter's latest edition is now online. Sales table report by Walt Kerskowski. Walt reports $50 was taken in at the last meeting, and the train show will be on February 14th in Fishkill. Mail order sales report by Ray Kelly. Ray reports $628.50 was taken in for January. Website report by Jeff Otto. The website has been updated some. The Yahoo group error has been fixed on posting pictures. Facebook report by Joe Sinise. New members are joining all the time. Roscoe Museum report by Joe Myers. Joe reports they have shut down till spring. There is ongoing work on trying to get grants for better lighting. O&WRHS report by Johnny V. John reports not much goes on during the winter, and they're possibly looking for a used engine for the 100-tonner. The website is promoting the O&W calendar of events. Excursion report by Ron Vasallo. Ron reports that hopefully there will be a fall bus trip on the PJM&K. Old business. Norm Barrett has a new inn on the 105. Hopefully better progress will be made now. Good of the society. Rich Cobb made a $700 donation to the society. New business. Norm Barrett. Norm reports MTH Trains is possibly planning on releasing an O-scale NY O&W caboose. Al Seaback mentioned that it would be more than likely a general model at best. A Barber caboose would be a better bet for them to release. Publicity report by Alex Presgintas. Alex reports that Carl's presentation was covered in the Times Herald Record, and O&W made an appearance. Collector's Corner. John B. brought in 3 LHR pins, Georgia Truss plate from the British Carriage Works circa 1890, and an early coal car photo. The meeting was adjourned at 8:20, and the archives reprint was handed out by Jim Shum, respectfully submitted by Ray Kelly.
Very good. Any additions or corrections?
Move to accept.
All right, good. Second? All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so moved. Okay, treasurer's report. Go.
Good evening. It's the 4th of the month. That means that Merrill Lynch hasn't sent me the statement, which I'll probably receive tomorrow. So we'll still have to go with the February number. $160,033.67. Checking account has $48,499.84. So the total is $208,533.51.
Very good, Bill. Any additions or corrections to that? All right,
Make a motion.
good. Second? All right. All in favor? Opposed? All right. Okay, induction of new members. Ray Pinglora sent the following. We have 4 new members. The Franklin Railroad and Community Museum up in Franklin. Those are the guys that have the Warwick business car. And Paul Horgan of Haddam, Connecticut. George Kuhn, K-U-H-N, of Blairstown, New Jersey. And David Koch, Oak Lawn, Illinois. Now, he had won the Bob Carrick Award membership that we raffled off. So, anyway, motion to accept these new members. Okay, second? All in favor? Opposed? So moved. All right. As of today, we have 562 members, of which 402, or 72%, have renewed for 2016. Sounds like good progress, better than usual, but not sure. Okay, committee and officer reports. Archives, similar to last month, things are still messed up because they're doing some construction in the last room. I was talking to one of the worker guys today, and he expects it to be wrapped up within 3 weeks. And at that point, we can really start moving ahead and cleaning up the archives and straightening it out the way it needs to be. So it's still hanging in there, still functional, but it's a little rough still. Okay, publications, Carl.
We're still selecting photos for the 2017 calendar, and still also getting photos for the 2016 Port Jervis and Monticello branch.
Now, what's the subject of the calendar?
It's scenes along the line.
Okay, gotcha.
Sorry.
How about newsletter?
Oh, newsletter, Ron, sorry.
Nothing new to report, but if you still haven't subscribed and you need any help in doing so, please see me sometime during the meeting.
And there's one other publication.
267 members on.
67?
267.
267, all right. There's one other publication, which is the DVD.
Yeah, thank you for, I didn't know if it fell under publications. Thank you. We have, we sold out of the NYO&W on film, about 2 years ago? Maybe a little bit longer. And we were lucky enough to reissue this. Okay, so those of you that are not familiar with it, it's about 2.5 hours worth of O&W footage, some in color of the Mountaineer and other places, cab ride from Weehawken to Roscoe. I mean, it's just a magnificent documentation of the O&W. If you're a member for the month of March, it's going for $21.95. So if you want to grab one, see Walter. If you are not a member and you want to grab one, we have a great membership DVD package that you might want to look at. You could also see Walter for that. And if you're a non-member and you just want to buy the DVD, it's $30.
And we've already gotten, 20 orders for the DVD, some of which have membership applications included. So this is, that combination is helping raise membership, which is critical to us. Okay, sales table, Walt.
We hook in $287 for last month.
Oh, good, very good.
This weekend I'll be going to Clark, and on the 20th I'll be up in Kingston with the sales table.
Thanks,
Very good.
Walter.
Thank you, Walt.
Thank you, Walt. Okay, mail order sales, Ray Kelly.
In February, we went $1,440.60.
Very good.
Was most of that the DVDs?
Haven't even started on the DVDs yet.
Thank you.
Okay, website, nothing changed materially there lately. Roscoe Museum, Joe? I see
I'll
Charlie's
defer
here.
to Charlie because I don't have a report.
Okay.
We came out with our first newsletter, so if you're a member, you should be getting your newsletter today or tomorrow, or hopefully soon. And it briefly talks about how we're going to try and upgrade the museum, and also about Wilmer Sippel's passing. The lighting contractors were actually in the museum today, and they upgraded whatever they could. Unfortunately, some of the light fixtures in that museum are so old they couldn't even, there was no retrofit for them. So we'll probably just replace them completely with track lighting, LED track lighting, because I want everything to be LED, and then we don't have to worry about anything. So
Fire or waste
yeah.
electricity.
Because a lot of the light fixtures we replaced, I think Wilmer obtained like used light fixtures, but unfortunately, especially the incandescent ones, the wiring was actually became very dangerous, so I had to replace those. And I think the fluorescent bulbs must be from the 1940s because they got cloth-covered wire. So,
Talk about your fire hazard.
yeah. So, like I said, you know, this is an O&W Railway Museum, and it's yours. So, please feel free, you know, to help us with donations and stuff. And I'd like to have a lot of members. I have 4 of the newsletters here, so if you want to, feel free to look through them. And like I said, we need all the help we can get. Like I said, I'm trying to make it more interactive, with interactive screens, video screens. We'll have a O-gauge layout that children can actually operate. We have those little Brio wooden ones for preschool children, and there'll be a scale O-gauge layout, you know, that pertains to the O&W with O&W rolling stock, and then an antique railroad. We're trying to make it where it's more family orientated, because we realize you have to move on and try and get these new people in. That, you know, railroads today aren't in everybody's life like they used to be. So we're trying to go for the younger generation, so we can keep this thing going, you know, for years to come. Well, thank you.
Very good. I saw Arnold. Okay.
The last meeting, it's because of what you're talking about, we didn't have a quorum. Things that were discussed, the 100-tonner from PSE&G that's got the engine down, they're thinking of just sidelining that and not because they have another Erie engine that they want to use to switch the yard. They might put the money into that instead of the 100-tonner. They're trying to rearrange the yard. They have equipment that they're going to be leasing out. The Iowa Pacific. They're leasing some of their coaches out to them, so they're trying to get them in line so they're ready to move out whenever they're ready. They're going to be down at Clark also. Most of the member groups really weren't doing much this time of the year, but the Whippany's getting ready for their Easter train. Susquehanna Historical Society is getting ready for their Easter Bunny train, and the Black River Western will also be running Easter trains March 13th to the 26th. They're trying to raise money so they can reopen the line between Ringo's and Lambertville. And that was pretty much it.
All right, thank you, John. Okay, excursion, did I see Donna? I guess not.
I have nothing to
Okay.
report, thank you.
Okay, Facebook, Joey, anything new?
No, not really nothing new on Facebook. It's still operating very smoothly. Emails, posts some great photos. We're getting people coming in to work. We're all past 1,100 members now. Almost 1,100, I'm sorry. So it's doing pretty good.
Then Yahoo Group, Ron? Yahoo Group, anything?
It's been active lately. I don't know if you've seen some of the
See that,
messages.
yeah.
So yeah, which is good. You know, it's a lot better than Facebook sometimes.
It's a different
Different, yeah.
Different animal. Okay, public relations, Alex.
Yes, if you had not seen earlier, a couple of weeks ago at the Times Record, we were giving a beautiful article covering the last Observer. And the only problem, there was a miscommunication with the price. It did state the book, which costs $35. Then you said immediately after, you must send in $35 plus 7 shipping and handling. We haven't seemed to have any problems with that yet. Very soon afterwards, we had another small article in the Record, a lot smaller, but stated that a lot of people have been calling to see where to buy the book, and multiple sources were given, including coming to the meeting tonight. And that's the latest from this week. Thank you.
All right, well, you're doing a super job, and it's real effective too, because how many orders did we get for that book so far? 8?
8 today at least.
Yeah, and that clearly came from the article, because that's all they're doing, is just ordering that one book. So, excellent. Okay, old business. We still have the 105 flying around.
I spoke to the gentleman that's going to be doing the classes for them, and they're not scheduled yet, but when he goes down, he's going to have a one-on-one meeting with the gentleman that's in charge of the site and try to get some more details of what's going on now since they've had that issue. So hopefully we'll have some action later this year.
Okay, so it's moving along. Yeah, very good. Yeah.
It's creeping.
Yeah, but thank you for staying on. Okay, any new business? All right. Okay, we have, for the good of the society, we already mentioned something, but any other for the good of the society? Arnold?
Can I ask or make a motion that we as a society donate $10,000 for renovations to the O&W Museum? Because I know they're struggling to try to renovate that place. Could I make that motion?
No.
No.
You can't, that's a trustee issue.
That's a financial thing.
You can present it to the trustees, though.
How do I do that?
I'll see that. I'll give you his email address.
All right.
Yeah, you're welcome to come to a trustee meeting, and the trustees, one of their jobs of the board of trustees is taking care of the finance of the society and making a budget, and that's not in the budget, so we couldn't just simply pass it now anyway.
What did they need?
To be announced. We got to meet 3 times a year, and all members are welcome to sit in on that meeting, but they don't participate.
So,
Jeff?
Yeah,
that's something. So, if anybody was planning on coming to my show, 314 in Walden, it's been postponed till April 6th at 6:30 at the Walden Library.
now that's the trolley show.
No, this is the O&W show.
I'm sorry, right.
That's the O&W show.
Okay, any other for the good of the society? Okay, well, as I mentioned before, Barbara Scally is here, and she had worked for the O&W 2 summers. Could you just very briefly mention what you did?
Oh, okay. I'll try to project to the whole room. If you can't hear me, please raise your hand. I'll try and speak a little louder. I grew up with the O&W. We didn't have alarm clocks in our house because the whistle went off at 7 o'clock, at which point we all hopped out of bed, got ready to go. My sister and myself to school, everybody else in the family except my mother to work. When I was in high school during World War II, a fellow named Dick Reed worked for my father in his transportation office where all the car records were kept. And he was drafted in, it would have been sometime in 1943 or 44. That summer vacation, my father picked me to go in to take his job, and I was, maybe 16 years old, to take his job to fill in with the car records. Now, the car records people were numbered 4. Dick was the one who, of course, went with Uncle Sam. So I took his place. My my Aunt Evelyn Johnson was one of the other people. I don't remember the fourth person. But at any rate, we kept the car records of each car movement on the line with a designation of what type of car that it was. And there were large sheets like this. We had slanted desks. I don't remember how I sat. Maybe I didn't, because half the time you had to reach up here to put the records in the proper places. But they were sheets like ledger sheets like this. And the record, the material came in from the conductors, who didn't always write very well or legibly, and so you had to kind of fudge it along. They came in penciled material, probably 4 or 5 sheets at a time, and were passed. They didn't pass out. They piled up because it was hard to keep up. The business was going continuously, day and night during the war, and we had to keep records of everything. So I don't know who did the military records. They were always a secret. Sometimes it was military material, tanks or jeeps. But there were many troop trains, and my father sometimes went down to the station in the middle of the night to make sure that the troops, the train went through, the troops were okay, and on their way down to the port in New York or Newark, wherever they went from, over to Europe. But anyway, we entered the sheets in pencil. We entered the type of car, whether it was a hopper or a freight car. They were just beginning then to do piggybacking. We entered when it came in and when it went out. If it came in Scranton, then and went out in Middletown, or if it came in Scranton and went out down in Weehawken, we noted that. Anything more?
That's fantastic. Very good. Very good. Thank you.
I could talk all evening about things during the time. My husband and I will have been married 68 years in April.
Congratulations.
My grandfather came when he was 8 years old during the 1800s to Middletown, his stepfather, to work on the railroad. He also worked on the railroad as an adult. My father-in-law, Joe Scally, came to Middletown in 1920 at the age of 16, got a job on the railroad, and guess who his boss was? My grandfather.
Very good. Thank you.
With World War II operations in the New York Harbor, a lot of the troop trains that headed to New York City actually came over the Hellgate Bridge and went down to the end of the Long Island Railroad's Bay Ridge branch, where the Brooklyn Army Terminal was located, and there were several piers there for embarkation of troops. So what that would basically mean for the O&W is any troop train that was on the O&W would probably be turned over to the New Haven at Campbell Hall or Maybrook. You know, you can make the argument where the interchange was. Go down over the Hellgate, over the High Bridge over Poughkeepsie, and then the Hellgate Bridge. So just visualizing, you know, or the Pullman troop sleepers, or the Pullman, or the trains of solid trains of Pullman.
Very possible. Yeah. Very good.
I was there when the Mountaineer came through the first time.
Really? Whoa. I take it everybody was real impressed with it.
Oh, very.
Excited. Yeah. Very neat. All righty. Thank you very much again. Okay, current local railroad topics, going from 1940s to now. Anything? Okay.
Jeff, just,
sure.
I'm sure everybody knows about this pending railroad strike on New Jersey Transit.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, they may be striking in the next week, and
Really?
it's gonna affect, obviously, all their lines and Metro North into Port Jervis.
Are they talking bus service in that
Yeah,
case?
but only in small hubs, not for the whole line.
Really?
But it's gonna be chaos if they go on strike, so.
Tell me about it.
Anybody located along those lines who commutes, just prepare.
Yes.
Fire them all and bring the retirees back.
Also, the Susquehanna has taken delivery of their two new rebuilt engines. One of them is online already. They're calling them SD33 Ecos. I'm not sure, they're remanufactured engines, and they were two of their former tunnel owners. They sent them out and had them rebuilt, and one of them is back now, but running around. It's kind of like it's an odd-looking engine. It's got like flared radiators, like an SD45. It's a little bit unusual looking, but the first one is definitely back. I believe they're having two done to supplement their SD60s.
Very cool. Okay, Owen says.
Owen says, all right, I put some very,
Okay, everybody.
I put some very easy questions for you tonight, I think. So we're going to start off with, would you please name one of the 4 O&W tunnels? Anybody?
Zigzag.
Yes.
Say again?
Fallsburg.
Fallsburg.
Hawks Nest.
Hawk Mountain.
Northfield.
Zigzag was just called
Northfield.
and Highview. Okay. Let's go with the lengths. We're going to start with the longest one.
Northfield.
The longest tunnel is
Highview.
Highview. And how many feet do you think that is?
3,900 or something?
3857. Very long tunnel. The second longest tunnel is
Northfield.
Northfield. And it is how long?
31.
1639. Hawk Mountain Tunnel is the third, and that is 1,131. And the smallest one, which is Fallsburg, is 1,024. The elevation of Highview Tunnel. Does anybody happen to know, above sea, how many feet above sea level is the Highview Tunnel?
3,700.
764.
Oh, that's
So 800 is about right. Does anybody know the car capacity in 1923? The car capacity of the Middletown yards. How many cars? Around.
In what year?
500.
23.
What month?
Okay, I don't have the number.
Yeah.
50,000.
2,000 it is. 2,000. The length of the Ellenville and Kingston branch of the O&W is how many miles? 35.8. 1/8.
Oh, just the Elmwood.
Just the Ellenville. Port Jervis, Monticello branch, the whole branch. Both.
18.
38.2 miles. Now here's a real easy one. The highest elevation on the main line of the O&W.
Young's Gap.
And what would that elevation be?
1875.
1,168.
1,798 feet. 1,800, somebody said 1,800.
Am I getting a gold star here?
From Livingston Manor to Roscoe. Okay, Livingston Manor to Roscoe. The O&W parallels what rivers? What three?
Willowweemock.
Willowweemock,
Beaverkill.
Little Beaverkill.
Beaverkill, and
East Branch.
East Branch of the Delaware.
There you
Oh,
go.
Okay.
and the Big Beaver Hill, too.
And
From Roscoe to
Big-
East Branch was the regular Beaver Hill.
Right.
Little Beaver
Yeah.
Hill was.
Little Beaverkill comes in from Clarksville. I know,
So,
I cross it every
the
morning.
main line crosses the Willowweemock.
Yep.
How many times?
7, I
4.
think.
6.
Okay.
Beaverkill,
3.
2. The East Branch of the Delaware,
One.
Once. Yeah.
In 1923, what was the key railroad-related business in operation in Livingston Manor?
Lumber.
Creosote treatment.
Creosote treatment plant. The creosote, this is 1923 again. Creosote treatment plant had a capacity of 500,000 ties a year. And they only really needed about 3 to 350 a year. No?
How long did that place last? I never heard anybody say it.
Till about 1946.
Oh, really?
They did all the ties on the line, when they were all replaced, had to go through that plant. They were all creosoted. Okay, in 1924, dealing with agents and operators or agent operators, which location on the Southern Division had the highest rate of pay? Now you have to think all the way through the Southern Division, all the way up to Sydney. What would have the highest rate of pay? The pay was, from what I can tell, was standardized to the job and not the person holding the job.
Kimball Hall? Somerville?
Actually,
Doja.
it's the Middletown freight agent. Believe it or not, got 89.25 cents per hour. Maybe it's a day. I don't know. I assumed it was hourly.
What year was that, Carl?
1924.
Carl, when I went on the railroad, I got $1.05.
Okay, there you go.
That's 1968.
Second highest paid agent on the line is at what town? Walton.
Sure.
82 cents an hour. On the Southern Division, name the 4 non-telegraph stations in 1924. They're meant to be obscure stations that don't have any operator at all. That will probably get you.
Boston.
Think of remote.
Fair Oaks.
Northern Division.
Apex.
Southern Division. Only
Or
the Southern.
Mills.
No, Apex actually had 2 or 3 operators. believe it or
Really?
not. Yep.
What's that little one between Burnside and Campbell Hall? What's the hell of a lot more than
Oh,
one
Rock
station?
Tavern.
Rock Tavern. Boom, that's one.
Or Mill.
No, but think of one that's not too far from Bloomingburg.
Oh, where?
Winterton is 2, and then go up the line by, go in the Walton City area.
Bridge Street?
My crazy place that I like. Merrickville and Young's. Those are the 4 stations still, believe it or not, all the stations the O&W had. In 1924, there were still 4 that didn't have a telegrapher or any kind of.
You said Young's? Oh, no, Young's Gap had a telegrapher, not Young's.
Well, Young's Gap at this particular point is not even on the, it's not even on the chart.
I know
I mean, it is on the chart, but not as a telegraph.
Because I have a picture of the telegraph office there.
One more quick
Early
question.
on.
Yeah.
One more quick question. The distance from Livingston Manor to Young's Gap is around
8 miles.
7 miles.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Okay. Does anybody know the grade on that? Because they know they needed a pusher to go.
2%.
I don't know the percentage. I only have the footage. Sorry.
Okay, well, downtown Livingston Manor is 1,441 feet above sea level.
Well, it's 65.8 feet per mile.
That's 1%.
Yeah.
It's 1%. Okay,
Okay.
it's 1%. So there you go. Owen has spoken.
Anything?
A lot of stuff on the table here, come visit it.
Okay.
I brought something only because I have something here. I brought it because I picked it up in the mailbox on my way here today. It's nothing not O&W related, but it's a Alco Century Series C430, C630 Operator's Manual. And it's like mint condition. It's about 50 years old. Between those 2 model locomotives together, they need less than 100. There were 77 C630s and 16 C430s. And this is a mint condition engineer's operating manual for that. So I just, like I said, I bought it on eBay. I picked it up on my way here, so I had it in the car. So I'll just lay it here in case anyone wants to look at it. But it's in perfect condition.
Very cool. Yep. Okay, Joey.
All right.
Among my travels a couple of weeks ago into Margaretville and deep into the Catskill Mountains, I stumbled upon a gentleman who had a lot of stuff, and his father was also a collector and passed away. And we were out in this barn and we found a big box of O&W paperwork. Pretty cool stuff in there. And he says to me, well, what do I do with this? I said, well, this is pretty good stuff here. Got some court documents from the late 50s. You got a really cool New York, Ontario, Western Railway bridge list. This has got every single bridge, number, everything on the entire O&W system. Pretty cool stuff in here. So I told him I think it should go to our archives. He says, absolutely, take it. So this whole thing here is going to be now donated to our wonderful archives.
Good.
And this was from the collection of Phil Goldstein Sr., and it was donated by his son, Phil Jr.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. That's just the type of thing we have tons of in the archives. So adding to it is.
Now you got some more.
What's that? Okay, very good. All right. Attendance and notification list. We still didn't have time to do it today, so maybe we'll do it next time. Don't worry about it. Archives reprint. Jim Shum.
Yeah.
There you go.
They should be here somewhere.
It's in the box on the road there.
Oh, Steve Olson? Yeah. Cool.
Thank you, sir.
You can make my way and fight with them.
Okay, the program tonight, our program chairman is here. I think he knows who's presenting it, I'm not sure.
Program Junctions, Interlocking, Part 2.
By you.
By me, by Carl, by George.
All right, very good. All right, and as usual, but for anybody that hasn't heard this before, during the presentation, it's very unfair to the presenter for people in the area to be talking amongst themselves. If you want to talk, be on the other side of the partitions or even in the little vestibule outside.
This is being recorded.
Okay. Motion to adjourn. Second?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. All right, so moved.
All right, so for the raffle tonight. I'm Doug Barberio, and tonight's program is going to be Interlockings, Interchanges, and Towers, Southern Division from Highview to Sydney. All right, guys, we're almost ready to start part 2. This is a work in progress. It's the first time I've ever got an opportunity to show this. This goes back 10 years, so it's been sitting on the computer for a while. I did some additions to it today. We're going to reprise the work that we showed you at Highview, and then we'll pick up from there from Summitville, etc. Well, Nahaski was here last time. In case you don't know, this is the tower on the Highview side, Summitville, GX Tower in Sydney, and of course Kenosha. Those are many of our contributors. Highview. Now this is looking north up to the tunnel. Your station is up here around the corner. There's your tower, BX Tower. Railroad's going to turn single track here in order to enter the tunnel. How long did we say that tunnel was? 3,800 feet, was that?
3,800.
Yes.
Close-up view is a glass plate negative. Notice there's a fair amount of business still up there at Highview, which would last for a while.
That's so for harvest.
This is looking down, and this is actually 3 tracks down in this area. I don't know if one of them was a slow track. I never bothered to investigate, but there's actually 3 tracks going down the mountain towards Winterton. And of course, our agent tower notice in the background. And a view of the depot, 1955, so things have changed. The tower, of course, is long gone. This is an interesting view. I mentioned it last time. The gentleman, Ed Weber, was on this train photographing the stations as he went by, not realizing, and nor did anyone else on the train know, that this was the last scheduled northbound O&W passenger train. They ended service after this day. So he has a number of pictures, a number of which Mr. Wakefield did a drawing of and put in his Mountains by Rail. High view, 1957. Yeah, the car kind of stands out, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And something popping out of the tunnel. It's U or V class Camelback. And that's probably my favorite shot. Unfortunately, the house that's here, which disappears sometime later on, because between this and the next photograph you're not going to see it, but the tower is obscured by the smoke in the building. And this is Mr. Still, took a lot of glass plate negatives in the area. Now notice this shot, 28 years later. Buildings are gone, and I don't think the tower is there at this point, but you can't tell.
You also lost the building to the left.
Yep, that one's gone as well. So the place is changing dramatically. One view, an old one coming out. This is Marv Cohen shots, one of my favorites. The first time we got to see it was in the Diesel book from Bob. And one of the great shots that Mr. Cohen ever took. Something special about that one. And a look in at the tunnel. And this is from Mr. Stellwagen, caboose, heading in northbound.
Excuse me, that signpost next to the caboose, what is, I have one of those, somebody gave me one of those, but I don't know what it is.
Flanger. Lift the flanger.
You're supposed to lift it when they see that.
Oh, okay, so, because there's a switch there, obviously. Okay, now I know what I got.
Actually, I always thought it was a hockey stick that had a little kink in it.
Guardrail in the tunnel. Yeah, guardrail in the tunnel.
Guardrail in the tunnel. Good point. You know, it doesn't show up on these shots. Did it show up in the previous one? I don't think so. Let's see. No, it doesn't show up there.
Yes, it is.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
We see it.
Same that was the roof.
It's right by the shed.
Oh, there it is.
Right by the shed.
It's close. Put off the roof. Go to the left of that
It's the
roof.
same angle as the
Here?
Oh, yeah, I
No,
see it.
yeah. You're right.
My eyes are not allowing me to see it. But
No, that's the flanger signal.
Okay, now find the
Not the guardrail.
it's got to be in here somewhere.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think there's a shot from inside the tunnel. Let's see. See if we get to it. That might answer the question. You don't see it there.
No.
Hockey stick is gone, by the way. There it is.
There's your guardrail.
Hey, Doug? Doug?
Yep.
Yeah, with that guardrail in the tunnel, that's why they were required to raise the flanger.
This is the other side. WX. I wish we had a better shot this close up, but we don't. At least not that we found. That was the second version of, where's Mr. Chris? He's around here somewhere. And they put the Mountaineer on it, and of course that was probably one of the best shots on WX Tower. So I couldn't not put that in the book, in the program. I think that was the second edition. No, that's not a bad shot. You can see how close the tower is to the tunnel. double track pretty much begins right here. And that's a better view. When, I think it was Ronnie got this mammocating day, we went up there, I think the two of us walking. I think this is the stone building that's still standing up there.
Dynamite shed.
Yeah, dynamite shed. And then, I don't know, it was Jeff and Ronnie and a couple people found the location for where the rods are.
Yeah.
Well, we're down to Summitville, and this is new material compared to the last time. This is probably one of the more interesting junctions because you've got two branches that come off. The Kingston branch, of course, here, and the Port Jervis line coming off in this direction. Now, both lines would use this yard for the cars to be taken on by the locals up or down the line. So I actually refer to this as the Kingston branch yard, but as you can see, and I think Carl, you and I were talking about, there's quite a few crossovers here for a train for the Port Jervis line to access the yard and to get back in order to get down on the Port Jervis. So they're going to have to foul both north and southbound mains in order to get over there. There is a runaround track that goes up just past the station, which will show up in a few slides. But if they're going to access any of the cars that are dropped here, it's a little bit of a problem if that's indeed where the cars are. Otherwise, it's possible cars are dropped in this vicinity. A little close-up view, I think this is from Bill's trip guidebook, shows you the Kingston branch yard, the Y. This is the end of the Port Jervis line, right up here. And the beginning of the Kingston branch is right in this vicinity. You're heading up towards Ellenville and Kingston there. This is, I believe, the ash pit. Now, just to give you an idea, notice the difference in the grade, one train going up north, south rather, and the Port Jervis train coming into town. Look at the difference in the grade right there. It's substantial. This was taken on a fan trip. The train that they were actually on is leaving the depot. Notice we got an E-class backing up to take the rest of the train, train enthusiast, up to Kingston. I believe this trip will then go down to the Port Jervis line as well. But I believe they first went up on the Kingston branch.
Looks like there's a diner in the consist. Right ahead of the observation.
Here's an E-class coming into town with a southbound going by it. Notice the crossover switches here and here. And this is an early postcard shot. This is the best one I found, actually, and it's from Ken Honeke's website. So I kept it in the program. Notice it's before the canopy was put on the station in front of, so this is just the depot. You don't have the canopy that we're all associated with the station in later years. The Kingston branch yard, if you will, with a couple of E-class engines in there. The Y is located right in here. Oh, I got a couple of surprises for you here. I found a few bags, a few tricks on the bag. This is looking north now. You notice there's a passenger train heading up towards Kingston here. So you have the two tracks here, additional track here. This is usually where the engines are, which I believe these are the same two engines we just saw. And of course, then there's the ash pit. Now this shot shows cars actually on the Y. You got quite a few cars in the yard, two cabooses, and in the early years, I don't know the date on this, but in the early years they used to run two locals out of here to go up to Kingston. I don't know how that worked out later on. They might have been running one local, but in the diesel era, that's exactly what happened. They'd be taking sometimes 30 cars up to Kingston and back, which is quite a few cars. And of course, then the train would run, a different train would run the next day to Port Jervis and Monticello. How about that? June 9th, 1946, 227 in the yard, probably the power for that time. Now the diesels have already arrived, the FTs are in service, so steam is probably getting bumped down a little bit. You've got an E-class in, looks like freight service, because passenger service is now done on the branches to say the least, working in the yard. It looks like she's pretty close to the ash pit, might be right next to it. So that's a nice little surprise. 2 years later, within 4 days, there's the diesel. Now this has got to be brand new. Because look at the stacks. It's what you saw when they were delivered. So this has got to be just delivered. The date on this photo says June 13th, 1948, which is pretty close to the delivery dates that I find in some of our records that say July of 48. So I'm going to say, okay, that's the date.
In Norwich on July 19th.
On 19th. So it's in the neighborhood.
I think some of them came to Erie, or came to Middletown on the Erie. The rest were delivered to Norwich off of Line 1.
And the first bunch came in March of 48, and then the last three came in July or August.
48. You know, what's also interesting in this picture, it looks like we still have two is that two cabooses here? It looks like it might be. But different views of the yard as it evolves. So I'm pretty fond of those two images. Here's your ash pit. The station during a fan trip. Try doing this today at a local railroad station.
There's literally no trace there right now. You walk through there.
I remember Ray and I went up there and we couldn't even figure out where the station was. And it was on a winter day. There was no snow on the ground. We had no clue.
It's just a big black of the yard.
No clue. No clue. If it wasn't for the mini bikers opening up the trail to give you an idea where the tracks are, that's even hard to figure out over here. Now, Ronnie found this one time we were in the archives. This is what never got built, but it would have been pretty cool if it did. The Summitville Coaling Tower would have been pretty neat. Which begs the question, how did they coal the engine since they never had it? So they must have had a car with some kind of an auger there because they obviously had to coal their engines. They're not sending the steam engines back every day to Middletown, most likely.
Doug, if you could...
Years ago, Joe Lux found a drawing for a proposed zinc ore motor at Summitville.
Is that the one, wasn't there a zinc mill there? Ronnie, didn't we have a zinc mine over there? Summitville, wasn't there a zinc mine in Summitville?
There was a zinc mine, yes.
And one of the tramways went over the main line and then it went down toward the Port Jervis line? I wonder if it's the same drawing.
Doug, if you go back to, and you don't have to, but if you go back to the picture of the yard, see the hopper standing there right next to that hopper is probably being used for ash, but the low gondolas on the left-hand side, that looks suspiciously like coal hopped in there. Probably the fireman just had to throw it up by himself.
That's a lot of work.
I'm not saying it isn't a lot of work, but this is, there's your evidence of how they called engines in Summitville.
That's a lot of cars too. What is it, 3 cars there?
Yeah.
But the last one's empty.
Yeah, the one nearest us is empty, so they're probably going to be moving.
Yeah.
And the hopper on the right is basically, that's probably where they threw the ash. It being a metal car, because you don't want to put hot ash into a wood car generally.
Good point. Here's the local coming in. What's interesting about this picture is these are the 2 tracks that we mentioned earlier that are the runarounds for the Port Jervis line, which will end somewhere just past the station. And of course the train is hiding the beginning of the Kingston branch down here. Excellent points. Another local coming in with the W class, 1930s, early 40s. Notice it doesn't have the logo just yet on the tender. It's not moving. Here we go. And one of the things the railroad did, as many of you know, is when an engine got shopped, often to see how it would handle things, they sent it over to Summitville for pusher service. So that's most likely what had just happened. This one's probably been shopped, and it does the pusher service duty here for a few days, and everything's okay, and she goes back out on the line somewhere. Here you have the 453 here and a train off the Kingston branch. Could even be a fan trip, which we don't actually have. I think there's a date on the next shot because this is the pusher engine, I think, in the next image. LB4 is coming into town, and there it is. The Port Jervis branch is down here. You can't even see it. These are those additional yard tracks we saw on the map that were stub-ended. It is possible that they left cars for the Port Jervis branch. I think this location, they'd leave cars when they've got to double the hill or something. It gets a little out of the way.
seen extra coaches on those tracks.
On these tracks?
Yeah, I think they got spares there.
I think there's a picture that Joey has. Jeff, you could confirm this. Isn't there a loader not that far away from this?
In the 50s, they had a gravel loader.
Right, and it's out of sight, it would have been out of sight to the left. There's a picture with an F unit shuffling cars in this area, right?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a distance from the window.
That photograph you're talking about, it's a little confusion with the one from Montezuma.
Here's the 458 and the LB4 going up the grade. And notice, quite a few cars sitting here on one of those tracks. Mountaineer coming into town. Kingston branch is just on the other side. And W2 coming into town. Okay, note one other thing to note here. I guess it's not in that one, but this was the awning we were talking about for those of you who are not that familiar with the railroad that was extended out from the station to the platform. Mountaineer once again. You've got your station here, you've got your water tank, and you can just barely see the Kingston branch back here. This is just about the last stretch of the Port Jervis line, and that's your southbound main. General view, a couple of coaches on the Port Jervis branch, your two main tracks, your Kingston branch heading up. There's a steamer here. I think the story on that is that something had happened to it. It's sitting here waiting to be serviced or brought back to Middletown, which is why it's here and not closer to the places where it would be normally used in pusher service. Something happened with that. I think Mihowski had mentioned it once. You have a symbol freight heading up the line. Gotta get some water. Notice the building here, the Kingston branch, we just on the other side from the other images we've seen. Another view of a passenger train heading up. Station, water tank. Port Jervis line begins just in there. Depot towards the end. Looks pretty good still. And that's a view just probably within the last month. Notice the yard is totally empty. By the end of the railroad, the last few years, they're not even using the yard here. Everything's coming out of Middletown. You want to go to Monticello, you want to go to Port Jervis, the cars and the engine all come out of Middletown. You go into Kingston, it comes out of Middletown and returns to Middletown. This is a particularly good shot from Bob Collins because we have action on the Kingston branch. We also have steam behind the freight. So there's a lot of action going on. Of course, these are your two tracks that form that runaround for the Port Jervis line. So you got a lot of action going here. And notice how young these engines are because there's no number on the lower portion of the front of the engine. So this is pretty young in their life.
Maybe operating single.
Yep, which is another little bit of a surprise. But this is, what is it, the 805?
Yeah.
I got a picture of the 601 off the Scranton division somewhere later in the show, and it's operated like that, which kind of surprises me also.
Usually the FTs were operated back.
You would think there'd be four with this kind of train, but maybe it's a one section. I don't know. It's a little surprising. Somebody said something over here.
Yeah, this is one of the first photos took after he got out of the Army. I think he got out in January of '46.
This is one of the shots that Mr. Shaughnessy took right just about the end of the railroad. Look at the date. And there's not much of a consist left in the train. And interestingly enough, because of that, that's understandable why we have only 2 units.
Well, the railroad had already been embargoed.
So we're just about dead.
It's a cleanup train.
Now, anybody want to guess what that is? Of course, that's the Neversink trestle, and I couldn't resist putting that in because right by the Neversink trestle, no, that's not a model, that's an actual photograph. There's another junction that's not that far away, Valley Junction. We often forget about these. This will take you up towards Monticello. That's the south leg of the Y, and if you go right past the station here, that's the valley line, if you will, to Port Jervis. So we tend to forget about that. The station, 1913. Very unique station, one of a kind on the railroad.
Looks like a pretty substantial station.
Oh, was.
Being in the middle of nowhere.
Was. There's some other images that were, I didn't add to the program. Joey's got some, and there were some from the archive that show the back view of it, but it's a pretty good sized building. It really, really is.
Mosaic tile floor.
Now, this is the Port Jervis train that's going to head back down to Port Jervis. This is your Monticello train. It's going to most likely head up to Kingston. Yeah, whose collection is the Star in now anyway? Do we know?
I traded it a couple months ago.
Did you trade it?
Yeah.
What year did the racetrack open?
That's a good question. Anybody know that? When did the racetrack open?
I don't think the racetrack ever figured into the...
No, but it's an interesting way of thinking. This is a little northwest of Valley Junction. This is Route 209, which doesn't look like this anymore. And the 245 taking a Texaco tank car, which there are a couple images of it in the valley. Joey and I had talked about it, but I put this in the program because this is one of the more interesting places on the Monticello branch. And there's another view with a different train where you can actually look under it and see the old bridge. If you're on 209 today, all this has been cut back. The abutments are long since passed. And the old bridge that's in the back there is now gone and been replaced, so you almost wouldn't recognize the place. It's been changed so much.
That was a one-car train, right?
I'm guessing it's a one-car train because there's that shot of it in the valley, you know, and it happened to be a Texaco car, so that's what I'm thinking. Now, there's other images where there's at least two tank cars here, but they're very gray and dark. So, Joey actually postured, if I remember right, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, that maybe sometimes the cars came via the Erie and then came up this way.
That's what we think, correct. That's bridge number 2 that he's on right there.
What's the street that pulls up?
That's Route 209.
And what's that one, that street?
This, I think, was the road that would lead you back to the Valley Junction station.
No, I think that one's down a little further. That one just goes through a couple of houses that are right there.
Well, then, if it's not this, then you're going to have to cross the railroad. Yeah, they might be behind it. You're right. Might be behind it, because then the other side is the trestle, and that's a different road there. So you're right. It would cross over, because it does cross over that leg of the Y. Correct.
According to Wikipedia, the Monticello Raceway opened June 27th, 1958. The railroad was very close.
Well, they might have took a couple of guys up there.
They took construction.
Might have took construction material up there. You never know.
Okay.
You know what that means, George? It could be a couple of seats up there with a logo. You better go up there. Now, this is just a quick look at Port Jervis map. This is the connection down here with the Erie, because you have an interchange that we often don't think of. I know Joey does. The freight house and the little yard area, which we believe the Erie worked after the O&W's demise, is here. This is the loop around the city where the various coal dealers are. Correct me, Joey, this is the coal dealer where we have that famous accident, I believe?
Yes, it is. Conrad Coal Feed,
Right.
Deer Park Road.
And we have another one that's pretty much right next to it. And so they have to meander around, nice little grade through the city. But they do have an interchange down here with the Erie. I think that interchange track is right in this vicinity.
You also have a third coal dealer right there at the very top left.
Right here.
That little loop right there, that was Williams Coal Park. That also had a famous wreck to it.
Isn't there remains of that left?
Yes, there is, but I've never been
Never seen a picture of it before.
Yeah, I've never seen it
neither have I.
before, but the foundation's still there.
No, neither have I. Now, this is what I'll call the upper yard, Port Jervis yard, where there was a turning Y, and you had various oil dealers, so I figured I'd show you that. Those of you who aren't familiar with Port Jervis, but eventually you will be. And a view of one of the diesels coming down with the oil tanks. This is the leg of the Y, which would be towards the city. You're looking towards Summitville, the back of the train.
That's the ice house right there in the background with the little peak on it right there.
And I threw in the freight house. I'm hoping something here is distilled.
Actually, I think it's
That's
brewed.
for Deer Park Brewery.
Oh, there you go.
It's brewed. That's where the A is.
Close enough. Down by the Erie station. Notice there was a star here, but from what I remember, somebody had absconded with it. The star is no longer there. I'm not going to mention these people.
Doug, my understanding is the stars belong to the individual engineers, not Gold Dog.
Yeah.
They were awarded
For service?
And by the way, that track was still there in '74.
There's actually a picture that I found in the archives with it still being there, late
That's
50s.
interesting, the number is painted on the lens of the headlight.
Yeah, take a look. Whoops. Sorry.
An early attempt at a lighted number board.
Yeah.
It's fairly common.
Now, this is a big jump, at about 50 or 60 miles. Forget about Kingston. We have an interchange there with the Ulster and Delaware / New York Central. Now, there's not that many pictures. Surprisingly, there are very few pictures of the Kingston branch compared to the Monticello and Port Jervis line. It's quite astounding. We have more pictures of depots, but because there are more depots, but there aren't that many pictures of trains. But there is one, even though it's sad, that'll show you the interchange, which will, I think it's the next shot. This is looking into Kingston Yard, and the interchange track is back here. I believe this led to the turntable. And all this is all gone. This track, of course, still remains, Catskill Mountain. The depot, which was pretty nice. There's certain resemblances here to Fallsburg with the architecture.
Walton. Walton?
Walton also.
Yeah, the separate baggage room.
That's the sad train. But it's on the interchange. So we have two views of the funeral train, if you want to call it that. That's the first. He's on the loading platform, freight house. And there it's a little further up the line. At least we have that.
What bridge is that in the background?
I think it's Washington Avenue.
Washington Avenue.
My wife used to call this the viaduct, and according to my father-in-law, somebody went over this bridge. It was a little too heavy, and he brought the whole sucker down. Yeah. My wife didn't live too far from here, and story goes, my mother-in-law, may she rest in peace, she used to turn that turntable in the O&W. They lived right by it. I wish she took a few pictures and left them, but you never know. But they used to turn the turntable. Now another big jump. Next interlocking, up at Fallsburg. You tend to forget about that. Single track going through the tunnel like all the tunnels. FG is the call letter. How about that? Now, I think this is a northbound train because, and see if you agree, I was looking at this today and noticing the rock formations. I don't think this is that side. So I'm thinking this is a northbound train coming in based on how the rock formation is. And I know this is later because it's a diesel, but I changed this just today to the northbound train because this just doesn't look quite right to me. So I'm not totally sure which way we're going here, but that's definitely the Fallsburg Tunnel.
I think it's northbound because if I remember, the north portal was much flatter ground. You could walk right in there. I think you can see the other side.
Over 1,000 feet long.
Yeah, that's right.
Telephone poles match like now too. There's still a telephone pole in the woods on the top there
Yeah.
that matches that now.
So we're agreeing this is a northbound train from the South Portal?
Yeah.
The Fallsburg Depot, we'll show you a few images of that. Oh, what an atrocity. They bricked it in or cinder blocked this in every time I go up there.
Yeah.
I feel like arresting the guy who built the thing. That's terrible. If it wasn't for the cupola, you would never know. Here we've got a train that's heading north. It's come out of the tunnel. That's the freight house over here. Passenger train coming by. Now the tower, if it was still there, is back in that vicinity. And the southbound train. And in the later days when she single tracked, the northbound passenger is on the siding here while a southbound freight is going to go by. I wish it was a little sharper, but that slide just isn't the best. That's the Fallsburg station, which was one of my favorites, and you can see similarity to the Kingston station and its architecture. One of the things that's kind of unusual, I don't think there's any other O&W station, correct me if I'm wrong, that has this arch within the canopy. You know, everything else is pretty squared up, and that's a little something different here.
And the arches continue in the windows of the station building.
Yeah,
First floor.
it's just a different depot, has a little different look to it. But it's a cousin to the one in Kingston, and most likely the one in Wald as well, based on the architecture.
FG Tower was at the north end of the tower?
On the north side, correct. I have those. I have these pictures slightly out of order.
What was at the south end of the tower?
Nothing.
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 So how did they control the switch? The crew got out and threw the switch?
That's a good question. I never got a chance to look at it, but
It was electrodramatic, so the tower ran both ends.
I was going to say that, Jeff. You beat me to it.
Yeah.
That would be the only answer.
Yeah. I doubt it was always electromagnetic.
Yes.
Now we. Oh.
Hey! That's my guy.
Now we have a story about this. I did a little research on this, just for you. Well, it's interesting you say that. This is Young's Gap, operator here, R.E. Wright, on the third trick. Telegraph call letter. Note the call letter. It's G. Okay, that's very important. I want you to remember that. And notice the decorations, right? St. Patrick's Day is coming. It's a view inside. We actually have some levers in here. Acts like an interlocking. Now, I found out who the last guy was to work in here. I got his name, and I got a photograph. Right?
What was the guy who sent the postcard?
You're pretty close to him. Notice it's G. O&WRHS. So, it's no wonder you have such an interest in this place.
I love that spot. Absolutely love that spot.
Doug, the signal, the levers there were probably operating the signal rather than switches.
No, there was a long siding there.
There was a crossover over there, if I remember
The
right.
pushers were cutting off.
Right, and they were running on the other track.
There's a switch there for long siding, or passing traffic.
So I'm going to let George guess where this image came from, but let's just say he was...
I know where it is, when you had me shackled up at Missy's.
Yeah, that's exactly where it was. He was shackled.
I was shackled.
He was shackled. He certainly was. He was under guard and chain for pilfering items of interest. Another place of interest is East Branch. I thought that would go over well.
Yeah. I've never
All
seen
right,
it.
Delaware Northern. There's not a lot of shots of this. I know John Hamm probably has some in his book, which I've never been able to get a copy of any of those images, so I only have a couple shots here. This is a poor postcard, but it'll have to do.
And I've only seen this postcard as a poor image.
I've never seen a good one.
Yeah.
Well, there's a clip in the DVD too.
Oh, is there? I think this is better. This is East Branch.
Yeah.
Similar postcard, but doesn't show the Delaware Northern. I do have one image we've seen that's been published. And that's the next one. Oh, no, it's after this. This is the depot.
Yeah.
Oh, now I have the stone business, which is still there. So it's got to be after that. I forgot what's in here.
I think that's Trout Brook.
Yeah, it might be. That's the one I was thinking of. And you got a bull moose coming by with it. Looks like a dynameter car. Right. I was just, thank you for saying it. And there's her locomotive, Delaware Northern #1. I think there's one other shot with them up there. I think it's their gas electric. Let's see. Yep, there she is. So we tend to forget about the Young's Gap, and East Branch is having an interlocking or an interchange, even if it was light, but that's the case.
The rail car
Yeah.
is known as the Red Heifer.
I was going to, thank you. I knew it was a name, I couldn't think of what it was. Now this is one more look up at the East Branch. This is looking south. Just past the East Branch station, looking towards Liberty, if you will, is where double track ended when they started with the CTC. And you can just barely see the cars coming in to what would be the southbound track in the background. There was another image that I was going to buy, and I turned around, and it disappeared, unfortunately. It was actually at the switch. It wasn't the best, but I regret not getting it. I just literally turned around and it was gone. Is that the one you wanted? That's a nice shot. Don't want to leave that one out. On to the next place. What should be the next place?
Hawk Mountain.
Hawk Mountain. There you go. Now this is the only shot I have of the south portal. I don't know where Al is tonight, but Al, eat your heart out. We actually have a train coming out of the tunnel. This is taken by Mr. Stellwagen, or his collection anyway. Now that's the north side, Oak Mountain Tunnel. And since it got brought up before, there's the guide rails.
There's guardrails.
And we've got a Light Mountain 407 coming out. It almost looks like a toy train, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It almost doesn't.
There's also a scene on the DVD here. Is it true that you can see the south portal now? It's been eroded now?
No, you see the smoke.
There was some chatter about that, but I don't know if it's true. This one, it looks like a toy train.
Wow.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to fit. You figure this is going to be, Joey, you're going to get the wrecker out, we're going to take the top off the engine here, it's not going to fit.
That's from 35 slides.
You know? I mean, that's just, it doesn't look like it's going to make it.
Well, the timetables used to have special instructions on these things to pull in the windshield wings, which aren't very wide at all. So those tunnels were tight.
And I suppose you, just gives you the creeps. Just doesn't look like it'll fit. Now here's your tower, Wheeler Tower. Notice these buildings because we're going to get a view, I think, from Marv Cohen, looking at a couple of these where the tower's gone. There's your coal piles in the background. This is the shot. The tower would probably be somewhere where Marv is, maybe a little further back. He's on a fan trip, 1953, I think.
There was a tower on the south end.
And that we don't have an image of. I only have a drawing from Al.
It was taken out in about 01.
And Hawk Mountain Tower. Notice the velocipede. There's two of them there, actually.
The stone and the bricks don't show them.
Now here's a few trains running through what is the South Yard. Pretty big power. Looks like it's got a, what is this over here? I can't see it without my glasses.
Baggage car.
Baggage car, thank you.
They were probably carrying LCL on that freight.
Passenger train. This is almost, take a look at the location. It's,
Yeah.
could almost be the same day.
You know, there's a long freight in the background of
Yep.
this picture, so maybe you just got them in the wrong order.
Possible. That one I think you've seen, but it's one of my favorites because you just barely to the left have got the coal tower is right here. You got your signals, you got your shanties, and the South Yard is right in here. There's several different images of this because it's cropped differently. Several of them crop out the 451. And that's roughly where you were looking, right down here. And there's your coal bunker, and here's the South Yard. Now, I'd say arguably the most important junction on the railroad is where? Here. Right? Without question. You've got what is the Southern Division, the Scranton Division, and although it's not the case technically, because it's single tracks, when you come out of the northern part of the yard of Kenosha, people for many years thought that was the beginning of the Northern Division, but we know it's actually Sydney. But still, I mean, nothing moved on the railroad that eventually didn't run through here.
Doug, I think emotionally, most people consider that the division between the Southern and Northern Division because of the
single track.
I mean, the railroad changed in character at that point, to a large extent.
Now, here's Hancock Junction, 1891. The original depot, inside the Y, you've got a single track bridge here. $1895. A little bit.
Could you go back one again?
Sure can. What do you say?
1891 and there's a tank car in there. What it's hauling?
Wood acid.
Maybe, yeah, it could be a pickle brine or something.
Good point. I never noticed that down there.
Maybe it was tank cars, mini tank cars.
It's interesting how we can all look at a picture and we all see something different. It's amazing. Isn't it amazing? I mean, I looked at a picture for a week. I never noticed the tank car. I'm looking here.
Right.
That's where I'm looking.
Could have been kerosene. Kerosene was sort of refined at that time.
Yeah, it could be kerosene.
Wood acid it picked it up. It was picked up over.
Coming out of Bay somewhere. How did they
Coming from the Delaware and Northern.
Yeah.
A little bit down on the ground. Here's your bridge starting to head off. This isn't the bridge proper, but this is the track to the Scranton Division. The other leg of the Y, this is a single track bridge at this time now.
You know,
It's
that's
coming in the back.
unusual. Back in the day, someone's going to use film up to take a picture in the rain. But that's a nice view.
It is nice.
I bet you there was a rainbow in the back and it didn't come out.
Got a couple surprises for you here in Kenosha. I worked on this today. Here's another shot. Hancock Junction. These are a lot of our hardware collectors here. They're up there for a convention. I won't mention any names because you want to protect the guilty.
Statute of limitations is long expired, Doug.
Doug, the sign in that picture is an early version. We know what the signs became with that blue-gray coloring. So that's an early version of the sign. Black on white. Black on white.
That's black on white as opposed to white on black.
You only have the distance of Scranton.
Now this is how she would look in later years with the new Kenosha, if you will, station, as it would be renamed. Freight House, those two buildings still exist today. Of course, the highway runs right through here now. And it's obviously some kind of fan trip. Look at all the people. I don't think this was a through train, to say the least. It could have been a fan trip off the Scranton Division, because there are some pictures of the 405 down there. There was no date on it.
1941.
41 is it, Walt?
Notice the coach and a couple of milk cars on the right-hand side. That might be the mixed for the Delhi branch laying over.
Now, at first I thought this was a freight coming in off the Y. And then I looked. Do you see another car behind this?
No.
No. So maybe she's switching, she's got a hot car, or she put in a I always imagineered that there was a train behind that car. And then today when I was looking at it, I said, wait a minute.
Could have been turning the car on the Y for
Something. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes...
Some kind of a move.
Sometimes a waybill would say the car had to be placed with a certain door against the consignee, so that they may be
But with the switch stand here, which attracts your attention, didn't notice that until today. I don't know how many years ago I had that
the car to
picture.
get that in the right position.
Now this is 1947, you're near the end of steam, and the yard's pretty busy. This is the John Pickett picture. So you got the 208 here, you got the 313, and I believe this is the 403. And there's still quite a bit of action, even though anthracite is pretty much dying out. You look at this scene and you never know the railroad's been in bankruptcy 10 years. You never know it. Now, these came from a gentleman named Mr. McLaughlin who went on a trip up here. And this is the depot here to your left. And notice you got a W class here. And down the background, I'm not sure exactly what steamer it is, but in a shot that's going to follow, we're going to see a heavy mountain coming our way. So maybe that's what's back there on a different track, and we've got the smoke of it coming. But these are interesting shots that he came up with it until, you know, I'd never seen them before. That's the mountain I was referencing. And notice there's a W class now in the opposite direction, so maybe he went around the Y to do other work, but you've got an engine right here as the train's pulling by.
So did you look this photo to see what that says on the shanty, that sign?
I think I did a long time
I think
ago.
it says something about look out for cars or look out for locomotives or something.
It's
a warning sign there.
Yeah. This is not a negative, unfortunately. It's a print. It's got some damage to it. But I guess I'm going to have to do it, George. You gave me some homework. Just to give you an idea of where the Y is and the coaling tower. A very, very, very busy place on the railroad. I think this is the best picture of a bull moose I ever saw. She actually looks attractive.
Yeah.
Because they're usually ungainly.
I love the bull moose. I do too.
You know what bull moose reminds me of? Remember this guy named Ty Domi?
Yeah, all muscle.
All muscle, little fire plug.
All solid.
Played for the Rangers.
No power.
Hey, Doug,
Who's that? Bob?
just a point of information, just remarked about that shop, that white pack with one car. They made, that locomotive made him bring the train off the Scranton division, he got a drawhead on the wrong end of the car, he had that cable, so only bring one car in at a time to get rid of it, and then has to go back and take the rest of the train.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
I mean, until today, I'd never noticed that it was one car. Now we have a few views of the trestle. Now, one thing that if you haven't seen the trestle very often, this is not an optical illusion. It's really bent this way to cover the main span here. All right, sometimes you look at it and you go, wait a minute. No, that's the way the bridge was built. But here's your way freight coming down. Notice the milk cars, some tank cars, coal. So this is the way freight to Mayfield.
Now, look at the strip down mountain behind it.
Oh, this is
Chemical. What's chemical?
no, they were logging. And this is a green. This is a friendly environment here. What are you talking about?
Anyone know why that one pier is white? Even on a trestle, it's white.
Yeah. All right. I'm up for white.
I have no idea.
You have no idea.
We never know. It's always been a question.
To go back to what Carl said, when the acid factories died, then this mountain came back to life, if I remember right. Here's your way freight looking on the other side. It's got a couple of milk cars here. We've got a couple of views of way freight, although they're different times.
Well, that picture is crystal clear.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Now this is one you say you wish you could reach out and touch someone. This is a real good one. There are some real good ones. This is one of them. And this is like the reverse angle view of the train we saw previously. Although it may not be the same train, obviously, but you've got your milk cars, a couple of box cars, a coal car, tank car, and of course your combine. So here you're going in the other direction. I think this was the John Pickett picture based on the fact that it's September 47. So this is also the same photographer as the view we looked into the north yard.
This image is currently in the collection of Gene Calora. This is one of those that I donated last December.
Yeah, I bought it probably from Gene.
Yeah, I bought it from Gene.
That's Mr. Collins. And George, it's still that color.
Yeah.
Easier to see. I never picked up on that. Maybe because of this shot, with the snow, it just doesn't resonate with me. But that's interesting.
And that looks like the meat train from Utica.
I think the data on it said it was BL1 from Maybrook. And another passenger train. Now this is heading north, unless it's turning on the Y. The Y would take you out on the trestle, of course.
Yeah.
Now this is the same time from that color shot from the tunnel when Mr. Cohen was coming through the north yard. Notice this is where your coal trestle would have been, a coal tower would have been, excuse me. And he's caught an NW2 here, the 123. Tried to bring out the shadow, but ironically, because of today's technology, the so-called orange bib comes out, when you try and play with it, comes out yellow.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird. You can barely see it on the side. But that's what's left of the south yard. The coal facilities are long gone. But before, we saw in this very vicinity the Y class, the Y2 class, and the W class in this very same area.
Yeah, there were trimmers there, right?
Yep, coal trimmers, Dodge Coal Facility. This is from Mr. McLaughlin. Again, this is a very early shot of an FT. Notice there's no number here. Right? He's on one of two tracks that lead to or from the Scranton Division. These tracks here would lead in front of the station. Notice the water tanks in the background and your coal facility. So if you ever get a shot in this area and you see the water tanks behind the locomotives, and there's a couple of tracks here, you know she's coming or going on the Scranton Division, and if it happens to be on those, you probably go into the yard, possibly a northbound train, or drop some cars in the yard. There were a few trains that would drop cars there for the for US2 and SU1 pick up to go north. And again, another shot, very early. Look at this, no number. Squeaky clean.
Yeah, it is.
Squeaky clean. Now this one does have the number board on it. Your station, water plug, and of course the freight house, which is still there. Today the road runs through here. Of course, I think it's at a slightly lower grade, but still. And what's the shop? There's still a shop in there, right?
Yeah.
Florist?
Yeah, little crafts.
Those numbers on the nose, they were an EMD thing they sold.
They sold?
I see them on a lot of other railroads. You know, glass buttons. And you just either tack welded it or bolted it on.
So at this point, we get the same thing here. So isn't there one in the archives?
Yeah. 806, I think.
806?
Yeah, I donated it.
The Lackawanna had them, he's done too.
Fireman's hanging out to get orders.
This also shot came from Mr. Kalar as well. So I think this is a picket shot around the same time. 4 units from Maybrook. Don't know where this one came from, but nice shot of an NW2. Yeah. And you got the depot.
Is that Shaughnessy?
No, actually it's not.
It's like a 48 Plymouth over there, or a Ford.
I looked in the folder and it's not his. That doesn't mean it isn't, it's just not in the folder that had his stuff. It's pretty early too. He did most of his shooting right near the end to the O&W. Boy, this one came out lousy. I have to look at this slide.
I got a better image of it. That's a full guard, 35 slides.
See the canvas on the radiator grill?
Yep. I don't know whose this one is either. No, wait, this might be Karsten's. That's what those both shots might be. These things are showing up on the internet, this shot, and listed as being Karsten's, which may have came out of, what's the name of the publishing group he had down there in Newton? Karsten's Publications. I should know that by now. But somebody went in there, the story at least I got is somebody went in there and the stuff was still lying around, and somebody grabbed it. And there's somebody on the internet selling 8x10s and 5x4s and 7x5s of certain images that when you look at the back of the image has his stamp on it, his logo. I bought this for some collector or something, so who knows if they exchange negatives. Now this is US2, pretty sharp, 4 units out of Norwich. For whatever reason, when they grabbed the train in Utica, they use NW2s to get to Norwich, which, at least that's most of the data I've seen, which is kind of interesting. Here she is again, going around. And of course, the best shot is that shot. And George, once again, but look, that leg is not that color.
And it's also not on the trestle anymore, right?
Yeah.
You're right.
Part of it is not in that color. A little mystery.
Or is there a pole in front of it that's blocking our view?
That's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it is, because there's a cross, there's something crossing, maybe it is. Might be just the angle of photography, you might be right. So it may still be that off-color, white, silver, whatever.
But the trestle itself isn't painted.
No.
Nor was in the other picture.
And a going away shot.
There it is again.
Yep. So now we have a mystery. This could be an X-file.
I always thought it might have something to do with World War II and looking from above. I don't know.
No, you wouldn't want to identify a railroad trestle.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
That third freight car looks very old and decrepit.
Yeah, kinda.
Yeah, but it looks like an old steel car.
It's awful dirty one way or another.
The hopper in front of it is even older.
Yeah, that's look, it's a composite, isn't
That's a
it?
composite construction. That might be one of those World War I USR
Yeah, sure is.
composite hoppers.
Now this is the shot I was telling you about. Fair amount of coal. It's 2 units, 601, which is the SO unit, and it's off the Scranton Division, and I forget how many cars I counted here. Maybe 15, 16 cars at least before you can't see it anymore. And it's only 2 units off the Scranton Division, so maybe it isn't that long, but I find that unusual to see 2 diesels.
Maybe you don't see the push.
Maybe it had a pusher in Mayfield.
That's also possible.
Had a pusher out of Mayfield.
So I made sure I throw this in there because it's kind of interesting to see that. And especially at this late date, you're talking at least 1945 or later, and you still see that much coal. So maybe it's during the Marshall Plan and coal is still running all over the place to go to Europe from any direction.
I think the coal field pretty much shut down in '48 because of that mine flooding incident.
Here you have a passenger train in front of the Kenosha Depot. The old engine house is visible there. And turning on the Y, before we head up to our last couple of areas, I figured we'd spend some time here since it's a little bit important to the railroad. And backing up to head back. By the way, let me just go back one way. Is that a familiar picture?
Yep.
I just wanted to check. Now this is not obviously the case, but it almost looks like that NW2 is right on the hind end.
It might be.
He might be turning the whole train.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, looking at what's there, that, you know, is either, that's probably the, I don't think any milk train originated in Kenosha other than the one that went up to Delhi. And that usually had an NW2. The other one that went through Kenosha started on the Scranton Division. Preston Park or Pointel.
One of the few color slides that I have. Figured I'd let you see this one. I wish it was a little sharper. I got to rescan it. What I like about it is we got an O&W caboose and we got the O&W logo of the F unit right next to it. Oh, they're all gone, and it looks like the buildings as well.
Yeah.
Everything's gone. That's a Shaughnessy shot.
Yeah.
2 of W2s in town means there was some business. This is Marv Cohen again, and look how desolate the yard is. That's the leg of the Y heading to the trestle. What I find interesting is 2 ladies walking here. The car inspectors? I don't know, I didn't notice that until today, and I'm like, wait a minute, they're,
Probably bringing their hubby's lunch.
I don't know what they're doing. I had never noticed it. And how many times have I looked at the slides? So you talk about you saw a tank car, And I'm looking at this picture and I'm trying to fix it up, and I'm looking down here and say, wait a minute. Never noticed it. A little further up the line, we go down to single track again, and we head up over the mountain. Now, what should be our next location?
Apex.
Actually, I forgot that. I forgot it. I really did. I should have had Apex. I forgot it. I'm going to trust you. I have to add it to the program. I said it was a work in progress. All right, I forgot that. So then after Apex, it should be... Forgot that one too. Walton, that's the one I got.
Well, I don't think there was much of any.
What was in Beerston?
Not much.
I don't think there was any interlocking or interchanges in Beerston.
I think it was
great. Apex, though, I can believe.
Either
Farrell's shot, I figured I'd put it in there because it's a pretty nice shot. It's been published in late Jack Farrell's in a magazine a couple of times. So we're coming into it. Now, what's interesting about Walton, of course, is you've got a Y there, and of course the beginning of the Delhi branch, so an interesting connection. And there are some similarities in, although much more business here, obviously, than Summitville, but the fact that you've got a branch, the Y, some similarities. You're at the water tank now. Light Mountain. This is probably at 35. Okay, so that makes sense. Anybody recognize that shot? Does it look familiar just a little bit? Somebody should do a drawing of this. You know? I think the drawing should be in color too.
Yeah.
Can we do a pen and ink here, or what do you think?
Black and white works for cover.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see this in color. Black and white color picture. Is that what you tell me? What is this, the Lehigh, New England?
The whole road was in black and white.
Hey, how about doing it in shades of maroon and orange?
Yeah, I know. Another shot similar, but notice we went from the, hold on a second, let's just go back here, from the original depot to the last depot. And of course the Y begins right in here. Go to the Delhi branch into turn. Most passenger trains that ended in Walton in later years would turn and back up on the Delhi branch before heading out of town. Now, I believe this was in Mark's work, and it's amazing what he put in there because I couldn't see it. He did some job. But the one part that I usually look for is the depot, which is, I'm having trouble seeing it now myself. Is it down in this area?
Yeah.
My eyes are giving me a problem, but it's down there. Freight house, I think the depot's right in here. He has numbers and listing. I think he has everybody's mailing address in what he did in that book. It's amazing. You just look at the pictures for hours with all the information he's got on there. It's incredible.
Great book.
Now that's roughly what the track plan looked like. You're coming into town, you've got one leg of the Y. Right by the depot, you've got the other leg of the Y, which of course isn't quite as sharp, so passenger trains would drop their passengers here. There's a little footage of a passenger train that was in front, and then it pulled up and backed down, so I'm wondering, after it reloaded, if it just backed down and headed out of town. Why should you turn again? Because that footage was taken by Mr. McLaughlin. Of course, this heads up towards the Bridge Street station. You have a substantial yard, a lot of businesses, creameries, feed mills, and one of the busiest places on the railroad right until the end that they would run a local up on the Delhi branch 6 days a week. Right to the end. So you could argue that this is probably one of the, if not Kenosha, certainly throughout the railroad, this is maybe one of the more important places. And Carl and I were talking about this, and it's been in discussion before. That's the only railroad in town.
Yeah.
Right? The only railroad in town. There's no competition. 1918.
High class.
The depot. Notice that waiting rooms and the freight room.
Yeah, but notice between the baggage room and there's like a little bit of a circular arch. Instead of two arches, it's only one big one.
I don't think this is, I'm gonna have to look at the diagram. I don't think it's an arch. I think it's squared up.
Okay.
Gotta look at the diagram. Hard to tell with the shadow.
You know, that baggage room is, last time I saw it.
It's still there.
2010, it's still there, and it's a house. The guy has his living room on that floor, and there is a basement that he has his bedroom in.
You put a basement in here?
It had a basement.
It had a basement?
Yeah.
But that's all.
So technically, the guy lives in the station?
Yeah. The baggage room.
Oh, jeez. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Strikes me.
I mean, the rest of the building's long gone.
Where was he and the rest of his family? Could have saved the whole building and moved everybody in. 302 at Walton. I wish there were a lot of pictures on the Y and whatever, but they're hard to come by. I think Mark has a few of them. Train in front of the depot. Now that's a good-sized milk train.
Yeah.
What did he say the name of that street was? He gave a name to that. Bridge Street?
That's all filled in, and there's a house.
Dry Bridge, that's it, Jeff.
Dry Bridge, yeah.
410. There's several shots of this one. Notice the creamery in the background?
With a milk car.
Yeah. Almost always, you're going to pick it up here. Another milk car. There's a sequence of shots. I don't know if these were also Hal Carson's, because there's certain views where he kind of walks around the train sitting here in front of the depot, and he takes different angles of the same train. Such as that one. You can see the feed mills down here. Wasn't that one of the coolest things about Mark's book? You got the shots inside these buildings. Isn't that amazing? You almost feel like you can step back in time and see that he did some job.
Helps to be a local.
I don't think he's from there, right? No, he just has an interest in there. He would go up there and research. He vacationed in the area, but he didn't live there. This is a nice shot. You got the 242 and the W class behind it. I assume for pusher duty or something, because when do you see double headers like this up there? Some kind of extra. There's a white flag here, and is this we have a feather? Or is it a flag?
It's a white flag.
Is it a white flag? From where I'm standing, it looks like a feather.
Yeah, no, it's a white flag flapping in the wind.
Got a bad angle. 228 at the depot. Here's a trivia question for you. I just thought of it. Whatever happened to that clock? Did it just get bulldozed and that was the end of it? Nobody got it? No, I'm just posing a question. I'm not trying to be a wise guy.
Probably did get.
I wonder if somebody actually got the clock before they tore the thing down. If anybody even had an interest in it. Another long milk train. Looking at the yard. Yet another one. It's amazing how many trains would go through here, but then if you want to go in the Northern Division, everything's got to go through Walton. And we're back at the water tank with the 250. There's a shot here, I think it's here, and Bill Wilcox might be in the picture, if I remember right. Here's another 275 here. Here's your creamery in the background. Kind of hard not to get it in the background.
Could you go back one time?
Sure.
What's it at the end of the tender, above the end of the tender? Man. No,
that's the water. That's the.
Looks like the water flow.
Water. Yeah, okay. I couldn't see.
Because there's that might be the handle on it, yeah.
Right.
Valve stem.
Mountaineer coming in. This looks like it's late in her life, as far as being that. I gotta send that one to Mark. I don't know if he had it or didn't use it. I think this one was in his book with the feed mills. That's probably one of my favorites, because you just don't see that class up there that often, at least in photographs. You just don't.
Yeah, the P class was usually down on the...
That's right. And this is 1936, so it's kind of late.
Is that 226 or 220?
220.
220, I think. 245, in front of the freight house.
Okay. Take a photo.
Is it?
Yep.
These are my favorite ones in particular because you see, you can actually see the track for the Y here. I know it's not quite focused, but you get your freight here, and now you can see the track layout. That one's pretty good. The lay of the land, the cars on the yard here that I think, and Mark would correct me, of course, but it looks like the yard for the branch because of its proximity to the switches here. You got the 323 switching in the yard, your depot. Of course, the signature thing of the whole scene is always this clearing up on the hill. This is from Mr. McLaughlin, and this train is the train that he took movies off of on the back end and watched it back up onto the trestle on the Delhi branch. So that's why I'm surmising maybe not just that day, but he backed out and then they left from there after taking on whoever would still be at the station and left town. And no point in coming back with the engine pointing south here. And that's taken from the back of that train. So you can see all the switches, of course, our typical signature thing that tells you in Walton, if you didn't recognize it, the silhouette of the depot, the feed mills, and this leg of the Y. And isn't that is that a truck or a motor car? What is that here I'm looking at? Motor car?
Motor car.
Yeah.
Looks like they had 1 or 2 switch tenders working at Walton.
Hey, Doug, what's also of interest there is that frog in the lower right. It looks like a multiple point frog.
This one?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Somehow the guardrail didn't line up.
Yeah, I'm going to have to send this one to Mark too, because I neglected to send it to him when he did the first version of his book. I don't know if I want to use it. It's amazing what you forget to do, and it's in your back pocket, practically. This is right by the engine house. It's the end of its life. It's still there. And the NW2 with the feed mills, 1950. And I think this is a Pickett shot. Quite a bend in this coach here, combine. Your freight house back here. Your Y is out sight to the right.
That was the Delhi branch.
Yep.
The Loose.
What kind of car is that? Is that a Crosley?
Yeah. Yeah, that would make it post 47, 48.
Is this the 40s version of the smart car?
Actually, yes.
Now this is coming out of Sydney. We just have a few other shots left. Notice all the milk. In Sydney itself, O&W is going to come in, cross over the D&H, and head up north. This will be our final stop. Technically, this is the division point. We've got to remember to add Apex. So, part of the Sydney Yard. Notice locomotives down here. I thought I took that out. The roundhouse, which is actually on the other side of the interlocking. I thought I hid this so I didn't want to show it, but that was there. The original depot. Coal tower. Coal bunkers, if you will. I thought I hid those shots. I guess not. The original freight house back here. The last depot, jointly used. The last freight depot, jointly used.
Any of these buildings still standing?
No, all gone.
That lasted till about 74.
Yeah, I have some pictures of this that I didn't include when it's very dilapidated in the 60s and 70s. And then Sinara. Barberio operators here. This is Clyde Conroe's father. And this is Leslie Young, who I think would be the Is he the chief dispatcher? He would be working right up to the last day. Yeah. Both would, of course, change with time. I think he would have glasses and a mustache in one of the pictures with him actually in the office in a previous publication years ago. Some look into the offices of the freight house. This is, notice, this is any of the stuff that you guys want, right? I heard that.
See the photo up?
Interesting how clean everything is. Just see my desk at home, you can't see it.
Well, I think they knew the company photographer.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, that is cool.
Actually, Doug, it's the Delhi flyer in this direction.
Right here.
Yeah.
That's heading north in that
It's heading
direction.
north? Okay, then it's the...
That's heading north.
Then it's the Utica flyer.
Yep. And that's your north version. We don't know if it's coming or going. And this is the D&H heading up towards Oneonta.
Well, the flyer had different names in different directions.
Wartime passenger for the Bendix plant, courtesy of John Tavy. Still pretty cool. You have to go there now and Imagineer it because there's nothing there. Absolutely nothing there.
Well, Canadian Pacific track is there.
Yeah, but it's still, you have to Imagineer it. And these pictures help you Imagineer it.
Yeah, but that's giving aid and comfort to the enemy. That
Yeah. This is one of my favorites. This thing looks very robust in this picture with this angle. There's your last freight house. Your depot is off to the side to the left. I got a, is that an outside brace?
Yeah, it looks like a USRA.
And it looks like you got a milk train here. That's definitely a milk car. Train 9, northbound milk. This is the one you like, Carl. Yep, he's part of Gene's collection.
I think the 53 usually switch Sydney.
Yep,
They
that's
usually
where she
switch
is.
Norwich, rather.
I remember getting this and not realizing that I had a station name in the background that made it very important because there aren't that many pictures of that early paint scheme.
There's one of the 103 in the Forest Diver collection.
Now, looks a little different than the new scheme.
Whoa!
And that's one that Tavy had used, I think in one of his books, he'd allowed me to look at. This has got to be up on top of the chimney or something. I mean, where is he taking this shot? This looks like we're on a model railroad. We're way up there. Don't slip.
Thing with drone.
A drone. It's a drone. It's a drone. The first drone. The first drone.
This one was a camera on a frisbee.
It didn't last. It got into the steam flume, and that was the end of the drone. Now, this is one of our main reasons, besides the fact that there was a good interchange here, because coal would go up the O&W north from the D&H, particularly in the early years, is our diamond. And this is taken from GX Tower. And notice we have one train coming and we have another one waiting. Here's your tower. Here's your train.
Kind of ball signal?
No, that's a false signal.
False signal? I don't know how that got in there. But this is probably from Marv Cohen. There's your depot and your freight. I think it got out of order. This is taken from the tower. This is about at the end.
That's actually a color image from 30.
It's funny you said that.
Oh.
Looks a little different though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
You do pick up the bib, but when it's the original color, sometimes you take a color shot and you flip it to black and white, and you definitely lose. Sometimes you take a black and white and you try and colorize it, and sometimes that doesn't look quite right.
That's the night before the road shut down.
this is the next to last shot, because the last shot is that one. Now, a funny story about this picture. This was in the program at the convention. Carl, you gave me this picture, or I purchased it from you, whatever it was, and I needed a picture for the show, so I took roughly 50 pictures with my digital camera of the image in the glass in the frame until I finally got one. And it happened to be I had to get very low, aka the photographer, without a reflection, and it's actually a little lower angle in appearance here than the actual photographer. But if I didn't tell you that, you wouldn't know.
No, it's great.
But 50 digital pictures. That'd be a roll of film, right, at least?
2 rolls.
Right, 2 rolls of film? Well, with digital, you just click, 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 click.
Great image.
So it's an excellent shot. That was in Bob's color book. And I was wrong, there's one more. There's your tower and your water tank. I think that's our last shot. Yep, that's it. We shall see you next month.
Oh.